I used to think happiness had a sound. The clinking of glasses, laughter under chandeliers, the soft rhythm of someone's hand on mine. That night, at our 5th anniversary party, the sound felt perfect. Golden light shimmered across the ballroom, and for a moment, I believed every rumor about fairy tales might be true. Aaron looked every bit the man I once dreamed of. Suit pressed, smile practiced, surrounded by people who adored him. And me? I played my role. The proud wife, the woman who'd made it. My best friend Chloe stood beside us, radiant, confident, the kind of woman everyone notices without meaning to. We'd grown up together. She knew my secrets, my fears, even the way I used to cry in bathrooms after corporate dinners when I felt invisible. So, when she raised her glass and toasted to unshakable love, the kind that survives success, I smiled, because I thought she meant our love, not hers. The music swelled. I remembered the smell of jasmine candles and champagne foam on my tongue. Everything glowed gold, like life had decided to reward me for all the years I'd spent pretending not to care what people thought. I didn't see the cracks. Not yet. Halfway through the evening, I drifted toward the bar, a small escape from polite laughter and perfectly timed compliments. That's when I heard it. 2 women whispering near the corner, voices low but sharp. One said, "She's wearing it. The same necklace he bought her last month, the one from Milan." The other giggled. "Must be awkward, though. His wife has the same taste." The glass in my hand trembled. I looked across the room. Chloe's necklace glinted under the chandelier. Diamond pendant, teardrop cut. Exactly like mine. Aaron had told me it was custom made. For a second, I thought it was a coincidence. It had to be. But my pulse disagreed. It started racing like it knew the truth before I did. The room blurred, laughter bending around me, music turning hollow. The glass slipped. Crimson wine splashed across white marble, a stain spreading like a secret refusing to stay hidden. Every eye turned toward me. I smiled, the way a publicist does when chaos hits, graceful, rehearsed, contained. Aaron rushed over, concern painted on his face like makeup. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. He touched my arm, steadying me. His hand felt colder than the glass on the floor. I excused myself, pretending I needed air. But what I really needed was truth. Outside, the city lights shimmered against the ballroom windows. I watched our reflection. Him inside, charming everyone. Me outside, fading. And right there, in the reflection, the distance between us became real. When the night finally ended, I told myself I was being paranoid. People make mistakes, gossip lies. But back home, as I undressed and placed the necklace on the dresser, it mocked me under the lamplight, identical to Chloe's. I poured a glass of wine, sat on the edge of the bed, and waited for him to come home. He didn't. At midnight, my phone buzzed. A notification from his. He'd left it unlocked on the counter. A preview flashed across the screen. "Chloe, miss you already." My breath caught. 3 words. And in those 3 words, 5 years collapsed. I opened the chat. Messages scrolled up like daggers. Plans, secrets, photos. Jokes I thought were ours. Phrases he'd use with me recycled like cheap PR lines. Forever but quiet. Always under the radar. Humiliation isn't loud. It's silent. It seeps through your bones until even breathing feels like a confession. He walked in an hour later, calm, casual, smelling of whiskey and rain. "You're still up?" I looked at him. My voice didn't shake. "How long?" He froze for half a breath, the kind of pause that confirms everything. Then he shrugged. "Lena, don't make this dramatic. It just happened. It just happened. As if betrayal was a spilled drink you could mop up and forget. As if love could survive the sound of that sentence. I laughed, a sound even I didn't recognize. He frowned. "You're overreacting." Then he turned away, loosening his tie, walking toward the door. No apology, no fear, just arrogance dressed as indifference. "You're leaving?" I asked. He didn't answer. The door clicked shut. The silence that followed was heavier than any fight we had ever had. I stood in the center of our perfect apartment, photos, furniture, everything arranged for guests to envy. And in that expensive stillness, I realized I'd been the decoration all along, a prop in his story, a woman he loved just enough to look respectable beside. The wedding ring felt like a shackle. I slid it off, and it slipped through my fingers, rolling across the floor until it stopped beside my reflection in the mirrored cabinet. I stared down at it, a small, circular reminder that endings are often disguised as symbols of forever. The next morning, the world continued pretending. Emails came in, appointments waited, clients smiled through screens. I went to work, smiled back, and pretended with them. But inside, something had cracked in a way that couldn't be fixed with forgiveness. Days passed. Chloe texted me. Innocent words, fake concern. "You okay? You seemed off at the party." I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. Silence was my reply. Aaron tried to call once, then stopped. Maybe guilt was inconvenient for his schedule. Maybe he didn't feel any. That weekend, I met a colleague for brunch. Halfway through, she leaned across the table and whispered, "Off the record, your husband and Chloe, people have been talking for months." She paused, reading my face. "I thought you knew." I smiled again, that publicist smile that hides wars. "I do now." When I returned home, the apartment felt smaller, heavier. Every photo looked staged. Every corner whispered his lies back to me. I opened a drawer and found the anniversary gift, a framed quote he'd given me 2 years ago. "Trust is the only luxury that can't be bought." The irony nearly made me laugh. That night, I poured another glass of wine, the last bottle we'd bought together. I held it up to the mirror, watching the red swirl under the light. It looked like blood. Maybe it was the death of the version of me who believed in him. Then the phone buzzed again. Evan, Aaron's business partner. We weren't close, but I'd always liked his quiet honesty. "Lena," the message read, "I'm sorry for what happened, but you should know that night wasn't an accident." I called him immediately. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. "He didn't just lose control. He wanted to provoke you, make you look unstable. There's a deal he's hiding. If anyone questions his judgment, he can blame you." My throat tightened. "So, humiliating me was strategy?" "Yes. But there's more. I'll explain when it's safe." He hung up. The word safe echoed long after the call ended. Suddenly, the humiliation felt smaller than the betrayal beneath it. It wasn't just infidelity. It was manipulation. Premeditated, practiced, cruel. I sat by the mirror again. The glass still carried faint cracks from when I'd thrown the frame earlier. I studied my reflection. No tears left. Just a woman who'd been broken publicly, but privately reborn. "You thought breaking me would make me small, but you forgot. I know what you hide in private." My voice sounded foreign, steady, measured, dangerous. That was the night grief died and calculation was born. In the weeks that followed, I mastered the art of invisibility. Smiles became shields. Silence became strategy. No one noticed the shift, but I did. Every time someone mentioned Aaron's name, my heart didn't race. It recorded. Every memory I had of him turned into evidence, not emotion. Chloe stopped calling. Maybe guilt found her too. Or maybe she was too busy wearing my life like a souvenir. People say betrayal breaks you. They're wrong. It builds you. Painfully, quietly, efficiently. Because the only thing sharper than heartbreak is the focus that follows. A month after the anniversary, I attended a networking event. Aaron was there, with Chloe, smiling for cameras. When his eyes met mine across the room, something flickered. Surprise? Maybe guilt? I didn't look away. He raised a glass, as if mocking. I smiled back. The kind of smile that promises the story isn't over. That night I went home, opened my laptop, and began writing again. Not love letters, not emails, notes.
Records, dates, patterns. Because if humiliation was my fall, then truth would be my revenge. And somewhere deep down, I knew this wasn't the end of our story. It was the prologue to his downfall. He betrayed me with my best friend, but he also handed me the reason I'd rise higher than them both.
Morning didn't feel like morning anymore. The sun rose, but it didn't warm me. Aaron had officially moved in with Chloe. I learned it not from him, but from a mutual friend's Instagram story. Their photo, tagged New Beginnings, smiled back at me from the screen. His arm around her waist, her hand over his heart. Same pose we'd once used in our wedding announcement. I didn't cry. Maybe I'd already run out of tears. Or maybe humiliation had burned everything soft inside me. The apartment felt like a graveyard of noise. Toothbrushes in pairs, mugs with matching initials, wine glasses we'd never wash again. For the first time in 5 years, I slept on one side of the bed without guilt. It was colder that way, but also clearer. Bills arrived in his name and mine. Rent, utilities, credit cards. I noticed he hadn't canceled any of the joint accounts. He didn't think I'd look at them. He assumed I'd crumble quietly, too ashamed to confront numbers that had always belonged to him. He always said I was terrible with money, that I, quote, lived for feelings, not figures. But grief does strange math. It turns pain into precision. So, I logged in, and what I found made my chest tighten. Withdrawals, consistent round numbers, hidden between routine expenses. $3,000, $4,500, $7,000, each labeled vaguely, quote-unquote, consulting, quote-unquote, miscellaneous, and quote-unquote, private transfer. Over 8 months, it added up to more than $70,000. At first, I thought it was his affair fund, hotel rooms, jewelry, gifts. But the pattern was too clean, too structured. This wasn't romance. It was strategy. The next morning, I called the bank pretending to be clueless about the transfers. The representative confirmed they were linked to a shell business under my name. My name. I ended the call, palms shaking. It wasn't enough that he'd humiliated me, he'd used me. Legally, financially, completely. The apartment walls seemed to close in. Every echo of laughter we once shared now sounded like a warning I'd ignored. That night, I opened my laptop again. Folders, files, spreadsheets, receipts. I started piecing together my marriage like a corporate case study. Every date, every payment, every secret. At 2 a.m., I stopped pretending this was heartbreak. This was theft, and the beginning of an audit he'd never see coming. 2 weeks later, I found his old tax files in our shared drive. Buried inside was a name I didn't recognize. ER Consulting. The initials tugged at something familiar. Then I remembered Ethan. Ross, a colleague from my PR firm who had left 2 years ago to start his own financial audit company. I hadn't spoken to him since his farewell party, but if anyone could decode this mess, it was him. I drafted the message twice before sending it. Hi, Ethan. I need help with something personal, confidential, financial. He replied in 5 minutes. Come by tomorrow. No questions until coffee. When I walked into his office, I didn't expect kindness, but Ethan greeted me like time hadn't passed. He didn't ask about the divorce, didn't even mention Aaron, just handed me a cup of coffee and said, "Show me what you found." For hours, we went through every document. His eyes sharpened as the pattern emerged. "Lena, this isn't random," he said finally. "These are structured diversions, split deposits, falsified invoices, corporate laundering. And the Shell account? It's under your name." "So what does that mean?" "It means he used you to hide stolen company funds." I stared at the screen. The numbers blurred into betrayal. He hadn't just broken vows, he'd turned me into a criminal on paper. Ethan looked up. "You need to go to the authorities." "No," I said. "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because I want to understand exactly what he did, before I destroy him with it." He didn't argue, just nodded slowly, like he recognized the calm before a storm. Over the next few days, we worked in silence, side by side. The office was small, pale blue light from monitors, stacks of files, the hum of quiet revenge taking shape. Ethan printed records, cross-checking every transaction with company logs. I built a timeline, the story of my own betrayal told in dates and decimals. Every withdrawal matched a moment of emotional distance. The first time he'd canceled a date night, a $5,000 transfer. The first time he said I was too emotional, another $3,000. Every wound had a receipt. Ethan pointed to a highlighted row. "This one," he said. "That's the trigger. He rerouted a bonus payout through your tax ID." I blinked. So he stole from his own firm using my name? Yes, $70,000 to be exact. "Why not just use his?" "Because you were the clean one," Ethan said softly. "He knew you'd never look." The words hit harder than any slap. I leaned back, exhaling. He used my trust like a disguise? Ethan met my eyes. "Then let's strip it away." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the figure, $70,000. Not the money itself, but what it represented, the cost of every time I'd believed him. Some people lose love. I lost illusion and found truth in the wreckage. At 3 a.m., I opened a new folder on my laptop. I titled it Project Comeback. Inside, I placed every file, transfers, screenshots, text logs, and for the first time since he'd left, I smiled. Because this wasn't a folder of pain, it was a blueprint for power. Days turned into weeks. Ethan became my shadow ally. He taught me how to trace IP addresses, encrypt documents, and hide evidence under harmless file names. He'd say things like, "You're learning faster than I expected," and I'd reply, "I've had a great teacher." Betrayal. But the closer we got to the truth, the heavier the risk became. If Aaron found out, he could flip the narrative, make it seem like I'd been involved in his fraud. So we moved carefully, like thieves reclaiming what was stolen. One evening, Ethan called with urgency. "Lena, I found something you need to see." I met him at his office. He pointed to the screen. "There's a hidden ledger here, labeled Future Fund. Looks like he was transferring money into an offshore account." "For what?" Ethan scrolled, then stopped. "Look at this memo line." I leaned closer. It read, "Baby plans." My throat closed. We'd been trying for a child 2 years ago. He told me to wait, said we needed financial stability first. Now I understood what he meant. He was preparing for a future, just not with me. "That's the $70,000, Ethan said quietly. "It's gone." I felt something inside me harden. Not heartbreak this time, but purpose. "No," I said, "it's not gone. It's just misplaced. And I'm going to find it." He nodded. "Then we keep going." He thought I'd crumble under the loss, but every dollar he stole became a breadcrumb to his ruin. The next step was risky. Ethan suggested we leak partial evidence to the company's compliance department anonymously. He said, they'll start an internal audit. He'll panic. Panic makes men sloppy. And while he spirals, I said, we collect everything. Exactly. It worked. Within days, Aaron started moving funds faster, leaving traces. Emails, transfers, deleted files resurrected from backups. He even contacted me once, a short calculated message. Hope you're doing okay. Let's meet. Closure's important. I didn't reply. Closure wasn't on my agenda. Consequences were. Ethan smiled when I told him. He's trying to gauge your reaction. Then let him wonder what silence sounds like. He once called me emotional. Now my calm was the loudest noise in his world. Weeks later, the investigation hit its climax. Ethan had tracked the offshore account, Belize, under a false company name. But to access proof, we needed authorization tied to my identity, the one he'd stolen. I had to log in myself. It was dangerous, illegal technically, but so was what he'd done to me. Hands trembling, I entered my credentials, the ones he'd used to register the account. The screen flickered, then opened. Rows of transactions. One by one, I scrolled through them. And there it was. $70,000 wire transfer to CL. Chloe's initials. My stomach turned. Ethan looked stunned. He didn't even hide it. No, because he thought I'd never look. I stared at the monitor. My reflection glowed faintly against the screen. For the first time, I didn't see the woman who'd been betrayed. I saw the woman who had outsmarted them both. He stole $70,000, but he also financed my rebirth. I spent the rest of that night building the story, not as a victim, but as the narrator of his undoing. Screenshots labeled, documents cross-referenced, a timeline of deceit structured like a corporate case study. Poetic justice in PowerPoint form. Ethan watched quietly. When I finished, he said, "You're not just exposing him, Lena. You're rewriting the ending."
I'm not rewriting, I said. I'm correcting. Before leaving, he asked, what will you do when it's all over? I smiled faintly. Build something new, with what he tried to destroy. I saved the final file, Project Comeback, version 1.0. Then I looked out the window, the city skyline lit like circuitry. Cold, quiet, alive. Grief had finally transformed into something sharper. Not revenge, justice, dressed in strategy. And as I shut down the computer, I whispered, you wanted to bury me in numbers, but numbers, they never lie. He stole $70,000, but he also financed my rebirth.
Revenge isn't rage, it's architecture. And in the weeks that followed, I built mine like a blueprint, measured, layered, precise. The goal wasn't destruction anymore, it was justice, disguised as consequence. Aaron had built his career on appearances, perfect marriage, polished speeches, polished lies. Now I'd use those same tools against him. The stage was already set. His company's annual investor summit, a night of pride, cameras, and money. The same type of event where he once paraded me like a trophy. This time, he wouldn't even see me coming. The plan. Redesigning ruin. Ethan stood by the whiteboard, marker in hand. The room smelled like ink in espresso. We do this once, no second chances. On the board, he'd drawn a simple plan. Access, proof, exposure. He looked at me. You'll need to attend the summit. I frowned. I'm not invited. Then you'll make them invite you, he said. They still see you as the quiet ex-wife. Use that. I crossed my arms. And once I'm inside, he smiled faintly. You press play. We spent hours constructing it, a silent assault built out of truth. The documents, the transfers, the ledgers, all automated to upload during Aaron's keynote. The moment he clicked on his presentation, his own evidence would betray him. Poetic, clean, final. He used to mock me for being too emotional for strategy. Now emotion was my fuel, and strategy was my weapon. He thought I'd burn in chaos, but I learned to build with the ashes. The dual life, smile and strike. By day, I was civil. I smiled in public, liked Chloe's new photos, and even replied politely when Aaron emailed about pending paperwork. He believed my silence was surrender, that I'd accepted my place in the aftermath. But at night, I turned into something sharper. Every smile became a mask, every word a diversion. While he flaunted his perfect life, I traced his digital fingerprints. Every phone call, every late-night login, every careless file rename. My apartment had turned into a control room. Screens, passwords, printouts. Ethan called it Lena's war room. I called it freedom in progress. Sometimes between lines of code, I'd stare at the city skyline and think, maybe revenge wasn't evil after all. Maybe it was balance. Forgiveness heals the soul, but exposure clears the debt. The temptation, Chloe's apology. It came out of nowhere. A text from Chloe. Please, can we talk? I didn't know about the money. I froze. Part of me wanted to ignore her. Another part, the one still curious about betrayal, agreed to meet. We met at a small cafe near the river. She looked pale, nervous. No diamonds this time, no luxury bags. Just guilt. I thought he loved me, she said, eyes down. He loves control. Always has. She nodded, tears slipping quietly. He used your name, Lena, for the accounts. I found out last month. I confronted him. He said you'd never find out. Why tell me now? I asked. Because I can't sleep, she whispered, and because he's about to do it again, only bigger. I pressed record on my phone, hidden beneath the napkin. She didn't know she was giving me the final piece, not confession, but proof. When she left, I stared at her empty cup. Once we'd toasted friendship. Now her regret was my leverage. Some apologies mend wounds, others sharpen knives. The countdown. T-minus 24 hours. Ethan was nervous. You're playing with fire, he said, as we reviewed the files. If this blows back, you'll go down too. He used your identity. I nodded. That's why I'm not hiding. I'll own every file before he can twist it. He sighed. You're sure? I've been sure since the night he left. The summit was tomorrow. Every hour felt like a heartbeat, every minute like a matchstick ready to spark. I could almost hear the countdown ticking in my veins. I packed the USB drive into a velvet box, the kind that once held jewelry. Funny how symbols change meaning. Once a token of love, now a weapon of truth. At midnight, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. No makeup, no tears, just focus. He stole my peace one lie at a time. Tomorrow, I take it all back in one truth. The crossroad. Fear or freedom. The morning of the summit, I received an email from an unknown address. It was short. We know what you're doing. Stop or lose everything. No name, no signature, but I knew that tone. It was him or someone covering for him. For a second, fear returned. That old familiar chill. But fear had lost its place in me long ago. I grabbed my phone, opened Project Comeback, and checked the upload schedule. Everything was ready. I called Ethan. If they silence me, the press gets it all. You're really doing this, he said. Yes. He exhaled. Then let's make it beautiful. The ballroom was dazzling. Gold lights, velvet drapes, the kind of crowd that pretends morality is optional. I entered quietly, blending into sequins and champagne. Aaron was at the podium, perfect suit, perfect lie. He looked radiant, the kind of confidence that only comes from deception. When our eyes met across the crowd, he didn't flinch. He smiled. That same smile he'd worn the night he admitted cheating. But tonight, he had no idea the numbers he'd used to control me were now the very ones scripted to destroy him. He started his speech. The first light appeared. Applause filled the room. Then, a flicker. The lights dimmed, the screens glitched. And the truth began to speak. He once said I couldn't handle money. Now every dollar he stole will speak for me. The audience watched as charts shifted into screenshots, transaction records, wire transfers, emails, Chloe's confession. Aaron froze mid-sentence. Gasps rippled through the hall. He turned toward the control booth, shouting orders, but it was too late. The presentation was automated, timed, irreversible. He looked for me in the crowd and found me, standing still, calm, watching. Security swarmed, investors whispered, phones recorded. The man who once called me fragile was now surrounded by the weight of his own fraud. He'd once humiliated me in public, now the universe had given me the same stage, but rewritten the script. As chaos erupted, I turned and walked out, the echo of applause and panic behind me. Each step felt lighter, not triumphant, but clean. I didn't destroy him out of hate. I simply let the truth walk out with me. He once said I couldn't handle money, and now every dollar he stole will speak for me.
Some stories don't end quietly. They end with flashbulbs, and that night, the night Aaron Cole's empire cracked, I learned that truth doesn't whisper, it performs. 1. The event, the Summit Showdown. 1 week after the glitch that had embarrassed him globally, Aaron announced a redemption gala to restore investor confidence. I called it his funeral. The invite came to me by accident, a generic press email blast, but I accepted it deliberately. That night, I arrived in silver, understated, elegant, the kind of calm that scares men like him. It wasn't armor, it was declaration. The ballroom shimmered with champagne laughter and forced optimism. Reporters circled like sharks beneath glitter. Aaron stood at the center, smiling that perfect CEO smile, as if nothing had happened, as if numbers didn't remember. He saw me across the room. For a moment, his jaw tightened, then the charm returned. "Lena," he said when I approached, his voice coated in irony. "You know, for someone who's claimed she's done, you still love a spotlight." I smiled back. "I don't chase spotlights anymore, Aaron. I just let the truth turn them on." Some people rehearse redemption speeches. Others let the evidence talk. 2. The reveal, when numbers speak. Halfway through his keynote, the lights dimmed again, just as planned. No glitch this time, just truth, choreographed with elegance. Behind him, the massive LED wall flickered, corporate logos replaced by bank logs. Every account, every transaction, every dollar stolen under his name. The crowd's polite smiles dissolved into disbelief. Investors leaned forward, reporters lifted cameras. Aaron froze mid-sentence, then laughed nervously. "Technical issue, someone's hacked." But the next image silenced him. A transaction labeled Charlie Investments Ltd. To A. Cole Personal Holdings, $70,000. Gasps erupted. Chloe's face drained of color. She clutched her wine glass and dropped it. Crimson spread across the white carpet, bleeding like irony. The lights brightened again, not soft gold this time, but harsh white. Spotlight, exposure, no shadows left. Aaron's voice cracked. "This isn't real, it's doctored." But the crowd already knew better. Screens don't lie. People do. The same digits he used to hide deceit now displayed his confession live. 3. The consequence. Collapse in gold. Security stepped forward, so did 2 federal agents, faces unreadable, papers in hand. The room fell silent. Aaron's father, seated near the front, stood slowly. "Aaron!" He didn't finish the sentence. Aaron backed away, voice trembling. "This is sabotage. She's behind this." Every camera turned to me. Dozens of eyes. Flashes erupted like gunfire. I didn't flinch. I just held his gaze and said calmly, "Numbers don't have emotions, Aaron. They just tell stories." He lunged forward, stopped by the agents. The handcuffs clicked like punctuation. The crowd gasped again. The cameras zoomed in. Chloe sobbed quietly near the corner. Not from guilt, from realization. He'd used her, too. One of the reporters asked me, "Ms. Morris, did you know about this investigation?" I smiled faintly. I didn't start it. I just stopped protecting it. He built his legacy on borrowed power. Tonight, the bill arrived. 4. The exit. Reversal. As they escorted him out, the scene mirrored another night, 5 years ago, at another gala. Back then, I had been the one walking away in shame. Now, he was. I walked the same corridor, same marble floors, same chandeliers. At this time, no one dared look away. Every step echoed the reversal of power. He called out behind me, "Lena!" I turned. His eyes, once full of arrogance, were empty. "You'll regret this," he said. I smiled softly. "No, you already did." The cameras flashed again, capturing his face, his fall, his fury. The story was no longer ours. It was evidence. As I reached the exit, I felt the cold night air hit my face. Clean, crisp, free. Ethan was waiting by the car. "You did it," he said. "No," I whispered. "The truth did." The same crowd that clapped for his success now filmed his surrender. 5. The quiet after the storm. The next morning, headlines screamed his downfall. CEO arrested in $70,000 fraud scandal. Whistleblower ex-wife sparks financial exposure. But I didn't read them. I didn't need validation. Because revenge, when complete, doesn't thrill. It quiets. I brewed my coffee, stared out the window, and watched the city wake up unaware that a single woman with a laptop had rewritten justice overnight. Somewhere in the chaos of headlines and hashtags, I received a message. From Chloe. "I hope one day you forgive me." I typed back, "I already did. That's why you'll never have my power again." I hit send and closed the laptop. Justice doesn't shout, it reconciles. The same crowd that clapped for his success now filmed his surrender.
The world had moved on. The headlines faded, the noise settled into silence. But peace, real peace, doesn't arrive overnight. It builds itself, brick by brick, out of lessons you never wanted to learn. The rebuild. Legacy consulting. A year later, my mornings looked different. No courtrooms, no scandals, just sunlight. The city skyline that once mocked me now looked like an ally, a mirror of rebuild and resilience. I stood in my new office, modest, bright, filled with voices of women learning what I never did in time, how to protect their worth, in numbers and in love. The sign on the wall read, "Legacy Consulting, empowering women to build financial freedom." It wasn't just a company, it was my redemption. The plaque beside my desk bore a simple engraving. Knowledge pays interest. I had built this from the same ashes he tried to bury me under. The same laptop that once collected evidence now designed financial literacy courses. Every spreadsheet I opened didn't remind me of loss anymore. It reminded me of power. Every number was a promise. Every client, a second chance for someone like me. He once made me fear the balance sheet. Now I teach women how to own it. The closure. The letter from prison. The letter arrived on a Thursday. Unmarked envelope, no return address. But the handwriting, familiar, controlled. I didn't open it right away. For 3 days, it sat on my desk beside my coffee mug, untouched. When I finally read it, it wasn't rage that followed, just understanding. Aaron wrote, "I never thought it would end like this. You were always smarter than me. I see that now." At the bottom was a check, $70,000. The restitution ordered by the court. He wrote, "You deserve it back." For a long while, I just stared at it. The number that had once symbolized betrayal now sat in my hands, powerless. I didn't cash it for myself. Instead, I transferred the funds to a local women's shelter under a new name, the Comeback Fund. It was poetic justice. Money once used to silence a woman would now amplify dozens more. He paid his debt in dollars. I turned it into voices. The visit. Chloe's redemption. Months later, I received another unexpected visitor. Chloe. She looked different. Simpler clothes, softer tone, eyes not sharp, but tired. She hesitated at the door. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. "I'm not here to defend myself, just to say I'm sorry." I studied her for a moment, the woman who once represented betrayal itself. But what I saw now wasn't my enemy. It was a reflection of who I could have become if I hadn't chosen growth. "Chloe," I said quietly, "you don't need my forgiveness to start over. You just need your own." She cried, not from guilt, but from relief. Before leaving, she glanced at the plaque on the wall. "Knowledge pays interest," she read out loud. Her smile trembled. That's really you."
I smiled back. It's all of us, eventually. Forgiveness doesn't erase history. It redefines it. The mirror again. No cracks left. That night I came home to quiet, the kind that doesn't hurt anymore. On my dresser sat the same mirror I once shattered after discovering the affair. It was whole now, restored, smooth, radiant under the glow of dawn light. And beside it, in a small frame, was my wedding ring. Not worn, not forgotten, just preserved, next to a donation certificate for $70,000 made out to the Comeback Fund. 2 symbols, one of loss, one of legacy. I touched the glass, whispering to the reflection that had survived everything. You didn't break. You became unshakable. The city outside was waking again, lights blinking like new chances. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the weight of what had happened, only gratitude that it did. Because from destruction, I'd built foundation. From betrayal, blueprint. From pain, purpose. I used to see a victim in that mirror. Now I see a woman who wrote her own ending. The legacy. Light without permission. A few weeks later, I stood before a small crowd at a local conference for women entrepreneurs. It wasn't glamorous, no chandeliers, no photographers, just honest faces, hungry for change. I shared my story not to dwell, but to demonstrate. To prove that the worst thing someone does to you can still become the best thing that ever happened. As I ended my talk, I said, "He cheated me out of love, but he paid $70,000 for my comeback." The room went silent. Then the applause came, not loud, but real. Afterwards, a young woman approached me. "Did it ever stop hurting?" she asked. I smiled softly. "No," I said. "It just stopped controlling me." The next morning, sunlight poured through my office window again. Warm, amber, endless. I looked at the framed plaque, the ring, the donation certificate, and whispered to myself, this was never revenge. It was a reintroduction. He cheated me out of love, but he paid $70,000 for my comeback.